In a crazy turn of events following the US-based elections, where we've now seen Trump confirmed as the president-elect, we could also potentially see Charles Hoskinson as his right-hand man, also known as his crypto advisor. Now, as a part of today's video, I'm going to be breaking down the fact that JP Morgan is now looking even more bullish on Bitcoin. We also have BlackRock's Bitcoin ETF now officially bigger and more valuable in terms of assets under management than their gold-based ETF. And then, of course, we've got big news when it comes to Cardano, its ecosystem governance. But without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump right on in. What's up, Beta Nation? Welcome to Dapp Central, your home for everything blockchain and crypto. I'm your host here, Fareed. As a part of today's video, we're breaking down all of the macro news, given the fact that Bitcoin has just made a brand new all-time high, currently chilling at a cool $76,000 per Bitcoin. And then we'll dive into the latest updates for the Cardano ecosystem. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump right on in here. There's quite a bit to chat about, but first and foremost, let's review the most recent Bitcoin price action. So looking across the board there, we definitely do have alts beginning to finally heat up. We still have Bitcoin dominance on the rise, currently standing at nearly 60%. And this has been on an uptrend since basically the beginning of the bear market back in late 2021. Now I'll look at the Bitcoin dominance here and Cardano a little bit more specifically, or in more specifics. But jumping to the very king here, which is Bitcoin, we now have the Bitcoin asset breaking into a brand new price range. So we'll basically be in price discovery over the course of the next coming months. And this is extremely important here, especially as we get ready to hopefully take profit. So the first thing I want to say is make sure to have an exit strategy. But as we can clearly see here, Bitcoin out of this range that we've been bouncing in and out of since late March. And so that was around the very first top where Bitcoin rode from about $15,000 to $16,000 all the way to about $69,000, rejected. And as we saw here, bouncing between some of the lows at around $55,000, the mid-range at about $65,000, and the top of the range, which was previously established at around $73,000. Now, as soon as the presidential elections started taking place here in the US, and as soon as Trump began to sort of lead the elections, we saw Bitcoin giving us a massive, massive candle to the upside here, breaking out of that range. Again, we're now sort of hovering at around $76,000. In the short term, I would definitely expect some sort of retrace to potentially retest the $73,000 range before we see an actual confirmation of this move or this trend to continue making higher highs. So I did at least want to kick things off by highlighting that. Now, jumping over into Cardano, ADA has really been outperforming here over the course of the last couple of days. Again, we've now broken past the 40-cent range, which was basically acting as resistance. As you can see here, we bumped into that bit of resistance back in mid-August, again, back in this towards the end of September. And then we also had bounced into it here, chopping around back in early July. If we zoom out on the daily here, we can see that even back during the bear market, the same exact range did provide resistance. And so again, here we have it providing resistance. And then here, before the first breakout last year, around December-ish, we had it providing resistance as well. But we were able to break through that and get to the next range highs, which were around the 60-cent range. After we broke through that, we hit the next range highs, which were around 79 cents. And so taking a look right now on the short term, it does look like Cardano is gearing up to hopefully hit the highs of the next range, which is around that 58 cents mark. Now, it won't happen overnight, so definitely do be careful of that. But it does appear that right now Cardano is beginning to finally posture bullish, as we can now see that it is trading on the daily above both the 50-day moving average as well as the 200-day moving average. So historically, when you're able to get above both of these averages, you are in a bullish posture. As I'm shooting this video, Cardano currently trading at 44 cents. All right, moving over into the macro market news here, we have BlackRock's Bitcoin spot ETF, which has now been accumulating more value than their gold-based ETF. So I'm going to read two brief pieces here where it states that BlackRock's iShares Spot Bitcoin ETF has now exceeded its iShares Gold Trust in assets under management, or AUM, the Bitcoin Trust has now reached $33.1 billion. Now, just to show you how quickly they have now loaded up their positions here, we can see that, again, right now they currently hold nearly $32.9 billion in assets when it comes to their Bitcoin ETF. And the Bitcoin ETF accumulated more than $10 billion worth of assets within its first 2 months of trading. Now, this was back around March when all of the Bitcoin spot ETFs were initially approved, actually maybe a little bit earlier than that, around January time. But for context here, and jumping back into the article, it states that it took the gold ETF around 2 years to achieve that amount of adoption, that $10 billion amount. Now, as gold has typically been seen as a safe haven for those looking beyond the US dollar, it appears that Bitcoin is now becoming that new alternative based off of the recent growth. So what it took for gold to do in 2 years, Bitcoin was able to do in 2 months. Again, really showing the power and the opportunity here when it comes to crypto and Bitcoin, of course. Moving right on over, after the recent win from Trump, if you're not aware, he did win the US-based elections here. He'll be inaugurated in early January. It states just in, banking giant JP Morgan says that Trump's victory will benefit Bitcoin, citing expansion of fiscal policies, the monetary debasement of fiat or the US dollar, geopolitical tensions, and tariffs. What's extremely hilarious about this here is, if you've been watching the channel, I mentioned the fact that BlackRock released an article about 2 months ago breaking down why Bitcoin is sort of the new digital gold. In that particular article, they broke down the same exact reasoning as to why people should jump into crypto. Again, talking about debasement of fiat, geopolitical tensions. One thing that isn't mentioned here, though, is the instant settlement and the ability for anybody to access and send funds using the Bitcoin network. So extremely bullish news here, again, coming out from a lot of big banks that weren't necessarily too bullish 2 years ago, right, to the state about Bitcoin and crypto assets. Moving right on over, we have the fact that the US government is now also about to put in an order for over or nearly 200,000 Bitcoin yearly into the markets. Now, this is valued at $14 billion per year, or $57.4 million of daily purchasing. Now, I'm still doing a little bit of research here, but this is really interesting and very reassuring to see, especially given the fact that Trump is pro-Bitcoin. He attended the Bitcoin rally taking place in Tennessee not too long ago, basically saying, hey, if I'm elected, I'm going to fire Gary Gensler, which obviously has yet to happen. I'm not even sure that he's able to do that. But it is, again, bullish to see a president now attending and being very well aware of the fact that crypto is big and that a lot of the supporters that do support him are crypto enthusiasts. So hopefully he's beginning to realize the impact and the power that the crypto community has, and that in return, he begins to be more lenient towards crypto favoring policies moving forward. Now, keeping on here with this trend, we have a breaking news coming in here stating that Fed Chair Gerome Powell has basically said that he would not be resigning if President-elect Trump asks him to resign. Obviously, Gerome Powell being in charge of the economy, he doesn't care about crypto. If anything, I think Trump should be focused more or less on Gary Gensler. He's been super critical of crypto. I can't necessarily say that Gerome Powell has been, but this is another gray area where we don't have any official clarity on whether or not Trump can actually do this. So taking a look here at an article from Forbes that states firing Gerome Powell from his role as the chairman is a bit of a legal gray area. And according to the American think tank Brookings, which noted that there's no statute that includes details about whether a president can remove a Fed chairman, and that other presidents have determined that they lacked the authority to fire someone in that particular position. In closing, it states that no president has ever attempted to remove a federal chair from their particular role, so the authority to do so has not yet actually been legally tested. Moving right on over, we have the Federal Reserve, again, led by Fed Chairman Gerome Powell, which has now cut interest rates by an additional 25 basis points in October for 2024. This is extremely bullish. The first rate cut saw us go from Bitcoin at around $58,000 all the way to $65,000. Since then, it's of course been trending, but with this most recent cut, I think that this is going to be even more bullish fuel and even more bullish momentum to see Bitcoin taken into new all-time highs. So it states here, the U.S. economy is eyeing a stark turnaround following the historic 2024 presidential election results that arrived earlier this week. Of course, again, Trump won. The election saw Donald Trump return to the White House, where he will look to aid the country in continuing the fight or to continue to fight, against the resilient inflation figures that have now fallen to 2.1% over or earlier this particular week. As we get ready to close out the macro news market update here, we've got a pretty good example of why Bitcoin OS is needed. This is pretty big news coming out here from Coinbase, where they now state Bitcoin meets Solana. Coinbase has officially launched CBBTC on Solana, bringing more of Bitcoin value or Bitcoin's value to the thriving Solana ecosystem. If you've missed the news about Bitcoin OS, it essentially uses zero-knowledge proofs in order to create a representation of Bitcoin on another network. Right now, it looks like they'll be working very closely with IOG to get a representation of Bitcoin OS implemented between Bitcoin and Cardano, allowing the liquidity from Bitcoin to now flow into the Cardano ecosystem. Now, the key piece about this is that this is not wrapped. This is not a bridge. This is using computational models or mathematical models or proofs in order to make sure that you're able to lock your Bitcoin on the Bitcoin network and, again, create a provable bit of information on Cardano that represents that locked asset on Bitcoin. And so with this recent news here from Coinbase, this is the complete opposite, where you have one centralized party that's basically created a mechanism or representation of Bitcoin who's fully in charge, right, of that representation on Solana. So if something goes wrong on Solana with CBBTC or the Coinbase version of Bitcoin, you probably won't be able to actually retrieve your real Bitcoin. Again, these are some of the challenges with bridges and centralized actors. So states here from Nathan, you either trust centralized exchanges and centralized databases to keep your Bitcoin worth a Bitcoin, or you trust yourself with the bridging process, which, again, Bitcoin OS isn't necessarily a bridge, but it is a way that you're able to move your assets or represent your assets on another network without having to trust a third party. That will do it there for macro-based updates. If you do enjoy content like this, please make sure to smash that thumbs up. I really do appreciate it. If it's your first time stopping by Dapp Central and you want more content like this, breaking down everything going on in the crypto space, consider subscribing to the channel. And last but not least, if you have any questions or comments or concerns, leave those down below. Now, I am a single stake pool operator, so if you'd like to take your support a step further, consider delegating with the official Dapp Central stake pool, which is stake pool ticker DAPP. I can't thank you all enough here for the support, literally helping me to grow the stake pool from nothing to something. And it really does mean a lot for me here as a content creator. So thank you, whether you're just hitting the like button or even delegating to the stake pool. It really all does make a difference. Now, shifting over into Cardano specifically, but continuing with the trend of talking about politics, we have a high likelihood that the Cardano founder, also known as IOHK Charles or Charles Hoskinson, could potentially become Trump's crypto advisor. Now, you're just asking me, that is extremely bullish, and I cannot contain my excitement. The reason being, we have Bitcoin OS unlocking tons of liquidity. We have NASA collaborating, right, using Cardano's tech in order to verify different assets within their ever important supply chain process. We have new users finally coming into the ecosystem. It's bull market time. And we have a pro crypto president. And if we're now also able to get Charles to be his right-hand man when it comes to crypto and advising, I think that could really set up Cardano to be a top contender for the top 2 or maybe even the top 3 spots within the entire blockchain space. Of course, I think crypto will always hold Bitcoin as sort of the king, but I do think that there's an opportunity for Cardano to be in that number 2 or potentially that number 3 spot, of course, excluding things like stablecoins. Now, there's a fully dedicated video here hosted by CoinDesk. Shout out to Stake with Pride for sharing this information. But this is all stemming from a post that came in from Rick McCracken. If you aren't aware, Rick, an OG here, Cardano enthusiast in all different facets here, contributing to the ecosystem, where he states, I hope that the Trump-Vance administration considers picking Charles Hoskinson as a crypto policy advisor. He's highly qualified, which I completely agree, and turned Cardano over to the community so that he could have some free time to get back, basically take a break and get back to his grand vision of crypto adoption. And so Rick hits on a really good point. Obviously, Charles is highly qualified. If you've watched any of his content, you know that. I don't have to explain that. But the biggest point here is the fact that Charles actually now has the time to do this. He's mentioned that he's not going to be participating in governance because, of course, he holds a lot of influence. And he knows that it's really just going to only bring a lot more FUD and questionable responses as to who's actually governing Cardano if he continues to stick around. So he's going to be doing his own thing. Now, IOG will still be developing Cardano. They're actually trying to figure out how we can do that in a proper way, especially with the budget for Cardano and the ongoing conversations around that amount. But all that aside, we have Tamara Hassan, who's the who's the president of IOG. So Charles is the CEO, but she's the president, stating there's a high likelihood that they actually will, and that this could be a wise decision. So you've got some pretty big voices here mentioning this. On top of that, you have the fact that Charles endorsed RFK. He showed up at the Rare Evo event not too long ago, and then he actually ended up stepping aside, not running as an independent or third-party candidate, but choosing to actually endorse Donald Trump. And so he's going to be a part of Donald Trump's cabinet, focusing on, I believe, health and making sure that companies are not taking advantage of consumers. But because of the fact that there's already a link between RFK and Charles Hoskinson, and there's now also a link between RFK and Donald Trump, there definitely is a likelihood. Now, to add to all of this, Charles has now responded. He was taking a break. He just turned 37. Happy birthday, Charles. But he's now just stated, and this was earlier this morning or earlier late yesterday, when I get back from Washington tomorrow, I'll live stream my experiences this week and the path ahead. So Charles is definitely considering something like this. Again, this would be massive for Cardano volume, Cardano adoption, and the visibility for by far the most secure, the most community-backed, the most decentralized chain that there is around next to Bitcoin. All right, that will do it there for that. As we get ready to close out here, interesting post coming in here from Plutus Pool, mentioning the fact that we're at a very pivotal time here. Again, Cardano's looking bullish. And the last time that we saw price action like this was around the last bull market, where Cardano went from the lows of around 5 cents all the way to $3. Of course, it sold off with the lows coming in at around the 20-cent range. But we're now at a very similar or very critical stage where Cardano looks to be ready to be taking off again. Now, does this mean that we have a $20 Cardano like Plutus Pool mentions here in this particular post? I think $20 is a stretch here. That would be quite a lot of market cap, but we will be having a lot more new participants within this bull market. And so definitely keep that in mind, right? We're going to be having the ETFs, potentially the US government, different nation states. And so a lot more liquidity coming in compared to last bull market, which theoretically could be bullish, right? Or in favor of what Plutus staking pool is mentioning here. But I'm going to be looking, at a much more conservative target. And for me, anytime that we're now going to be over, a dollar or two, I'm definitely going to be taking the time to DCA out of Cardano, making sure to take some profits along the way. Of course, not financial advice, especially after the crazy situation here that just happened with Meld, which I'm actually going to be talking about in a future video. I'm going to be doing some restructuring around Dapp Central, but that's for another time in another conversation. But I do want to close out here by highlighting some bullish news here. Again, Cardano leading when it comes to the 7-day moving average or the 7-day percentage growth when you're taking a look at assets or cryptos over a $10 billion market cap. So you can see here that Cardano's been outperforming Dogecoin, Solana. It's also been outperforming ETH, as well as, of course, Bitcoin and even Shiba Inu. So don't sleep on Cardano. When it moves, it definitely moves quickly. Now, jumping back over and focusing a little bit on governance, shout out to Mauro here from the Latin American community. He's quickly highlighted the fact that this is going to be one of the different buildings where for one of the 3 days during the Cardano Constitutional Convention, which will be taking place in Buenos Aires, Argentina, that the community will be hosting a particular event at. So this looks amazing, very beautiful. It looks like this could potentially be where the actual Cardano Constitution is ratified or agreed upon by the community. And keep in mind that we'll be witnessing nearly 150 members from Cardano and the community in attendance in Latin America or in Argentina for the Constitutional Convention. As we get ready to close out here today's video, last but not least, we have 3 upcoming Cardano token sales. So the first is for the Pond token or for the Pandora platform. If you aren't aware, I just sat down with Sean, aka Blackbird. They're bringing smart accounts to Cardano, and the way that they're able to do that, or the goal of the platform like Pandora, is to basically aggregate all the features that we know and love here in the ecosystem. That includes, for example, things like the ability to swap or DEX, the ability to lend and borrow, the ability to list NFTs, to even play games. You'll be able to do that using their smart account all on one platform. Next, we have the Cerberus token, or the XER token. If you aren't aware of Cerberus, their risk ratings protocol here just actually released some news about MELD and why they were rated triple B. If you want to find out more about that, make sure to jump over to the Cerberus X account. But we have a cheat sheet here also breaking down their ongoing sales, some of the details, and maybe just doubling back here with Pond. This actually kicked off on November 8th at 12 p.m. UTC. For Cerberus, this will be kicking off on November 11th. No particular time just yet. But then as we already close things out here, I just sat down with Adnan from Sync AI, which is a platform that aims to simplify how users interact with the blockchain, giving them the ability to control and to do things, for example, as swaps or close positions using AI, and being able to do that without necessarily interacting with a blockchain-based wallet. So their Sync token for Sync AI is going on sale on November 14th. All three of these will be taking place on the MinSwap launch pool, which is completely permissionless, with the Pond token being that first token launched. That will do it here for today's video, breaking down the macro markets, taking a look at Bitcoin, the recent crypto elections, or excuse me, the recent US-based elections, which have officially pumped crypto, and then talking about Charles potentially getting involved in politics, right? I know that he's been very outspoken very recently about that. Some people love it, some people hate it. You know, I'm indifferent about it. But then, of course, also breaking down additional news about governance and closing out by highlighting those three token sales. That will do it here for today's video. As always, if you enjoy content like this, I would appreciate you if you could smash that thumbs up. If it's your first time stopping by and you want more content like this, breaking down everything going on with Bitcoin, the macro markets, and Cardano, consider subscribing to the channel. And last but not least, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, leave those down below. That said, and as always, I'll see you guys in the next video.